Good morning, everybody. I'm Larry Weissoon. If you enjoy real-world hunting and fishing talk, you're really going to enjoy listening to my good friend, Luke Clayton, and his guest for the next hour.
This is David Fox, and welcome to Outdoors with Luke Clayton and Friends. Luke has been a recognized outdoors writer for the past 3 decades and writes for a host of outdoor publications. Luke pens a weekly newspaper outdoors column that appears in over 40 Texas newspapers. Luke is on the pro staff of Pyramyd Air, your one-stop shop for everything air gun related. Smokin Tex electric smokers and AGM Global Vision, maker of an awesome line of thermal hunting scopes and spotters. Feel free to contact Luke through his website, catfishradio.org. Now let's join Luke and his guests for this week's show.
Well, guys, thank you all for that nice introduction. And, Larry, you are just back from, I believe, New Mexico, event up there with the Dallas Safari Club, right?
Absolutely. DSC has set up chapters and is setting up chapters more and more across much of North America. And, of course, the New Mexico chapter has been in existence now, I think, for about 5-6 years. And I've had the great pleasure of being their speaker the last couple of years at their banquet. And, of course, our show every week is brought to you by DFC, which stands for Conservation Education, Hunter Advocacy, Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable, stealth vision makers of some of the most fantastic spotting scopes, binoculars that were ever made. And Mossberg, of course, makes all their guns here in the USA. And actually, they're made down close to Texas, or in Texas, down around Eagle Pass, Texas. And gosh, somebody, we've got so many other great sponsors out there like VINEYARDMAX that are producing some of the unbelievable deer feeders and attractant, and now also selling my hunting knives that I designed. So, we've got some great sponsors, and we get to use those things quite a bit, Luke. So, we can kind of address some of those kind of things firsthand when you get right down to it.
They all definitely come tested. We don't, and we've got a bunch more sponsors that's made this thing possible for years. Coming up in our show, Larry, you mentioned Stealth Vision. Folks, Stealth Vision this month, I just saw a press release coming out with some binoculars. Do you remember looking at those binoculars down in Crockett, Texas at their headquarters, Larry? Yeah, I know you do.
I do. I've been privy to some of, one of the things about that group, and it's headed by Dr. John McCall, who's one of the preeminent eye surgeons actually in the world when you get right down to it, and Joe Cunningham, who used to play for the St. Louis Cardinals. I think he's actually got like 3 or 4, I think he's got like 3 World Series rings, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then with Matt Burgess as well, too, who's an outfitter and a bunch of other things up, in Alaska and Montana. These guys are sticklers for quality. And that was one of the things I noticed when we first started looking at binoculars. They had someone said, look at this, and says, tell me what's wrong with them. And I go, well, it'd be better if it did this or that. And they go, exactly that. You want to see our notes, what we wrote down before you got here, kind of thing. And so they've been developing this binocular, which is a rangefinder binocular that is just phenomenal kind of thing. And of course, it's got unbelievable glass in it, and it works really fast. I can't remember how many yards out this one will go, but for the most part, if you're looking at 2,000 yards or less, that you're never going to shoot any farther than that.
Oh, no.
Usually a whole lot closer kind of thing.
Yeah.
So their binoculars and their entire optic line are phenomenal. And as a matter of fact, this coming week, I've got Ron Spomer, who's a writer from up in Idaho, and Jeff Johnson, who's a writer out of Oklahoma, and then also Dr. Mike Arnold, who's become a very dear friend of mine for a lot of different reasons, a writer out of the University of Georgia, or he lives down, he's the head of the genetics department at the University of Georgia, and they're coming over to Crockett, and we're going to let them run through the paces not only of their binocular, but stealth vision binocular, but also their scopes and their spotting scopes. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
You guys
I think you start seeing a whole lot of writing about those products here very shortly.
You bet. Well, The fact that the binoculars are you can range them. I got a story to tell you that you'll relate to, and I think our friends will too. I've got a good friend, Kenneth Shepard, that lives down the road. He lives about 1 mile from me. You've been there with us and seen old Kenneth take a iron-sighted lever gun, I think, and shoot a coyote at about 100 yards. And Kenneth is a shooter. He's a shooter. So I've been telling him about this Stealth Vision scope and how accurate. I'm shooting it. I've got it mounted on a CVA Cascade rifle, 6.5 PRC. And this is not a custom rifle. It's an out-of-the-box rifle that, I don't know what, $800, $850, something like that, I think is what they cost. But it's not a custom rifle. Got a good barrel on it. So anyway, last week I was over at the Cotton shooting it some more. And out to 600 yards, I really we couldn't find a place to shoot any farther, but 600 yards is a long way.
Yes, it is.
To be at 6 football fields, to be thinking of, and I'm not going to be shooting. I don't have any doubt from a good rest, if a big boar was out there at 600 yards, any of us could level our rifles down with that stealth scope and make a good shot. We do that on paper all the time, or these metal targets, So back to Kenneth. So I've been telling Kenneth, I knew it was burning a hole. He was ready to see that scope. And I said, well, I want you to shoot this thing. And he's got a spot out there around, 300 yards. I think we ranged at 305 or something like that, up there near his shop, down to his shooting range down there. He's got some metal targets down there, silhouettes, if you will. So Kenneth was all fired up. So I put a corn feeder up in that pecan grove to bait some hogs in there, and he helped me get it hung up in a big old pecan tree. So got it going for the hogs, and it's time to shoot. And he said, well, you think we ought to go a little closer? Let me get familiar with this. I said, no, I don't think so. I think you're fixing to shoot this thing very accurately. So we dialed in on the turret, dialed in. I think it was 305, whatever that yardage was. Mm-hmm. 300 is what we dialed in, if the closest increment to 25 there. And old Kenneth, like I say, he's a shooter, so nothing would do. He got his bipod and stuck on there, laid it on the little hump of ground, got in a prone position. I said, he's going to be impressed with this. And he shot a 5-inch metal target down there at that range. Dead center. We just dialed it in, and then of course that was not enough. We moved around all kind of places, and he was banging that target away. Kenneth has been a competitive shooter a lot for different, silhouette shooter and different things. But he was highly impressed, and I think that might have been one of the best scopes that he'd ever shot through. He was extremely impressed. Larry, you know what? I tell you, I checked my trail cameras down here yesterday.
Oh, yes, sir.
Pulled the SD card out of them. I've got 2 feeders, one that I just described over at Kenneth, mostly for hogs. I've got it set to go off to throw corn at 8:45. That's about 15 minutes before dark, right now. And the hogs, it's been set 2 days now. The hogs haven't hit it yet. They will very soon. It's in a pecan grove. And exactly, it's probably, 300 or 400 yards long of pecans.
Yes, sir. Coming
out of the bottoms up to through Kenneth's property. And I'll tell you what's happening right now. The pecans are about half developed right now, and the squirrels are cutting them and knocking them down. Hogs are already in there eating those green pecans big time. So I thought, well, we know they'll eat corn, so I've got that corn out there, and I'm going to go to get them patterned to that. I'm going to put out some of our VINEYARDMAX. It's for deer, of course, but I know hogs can smell those grapes too, and get them coming in. That will be a good opportunity to do some long-range hog shooting if I can get them in there before dark. With that 6.5 PRC, that Cascade, hopefully. If not, by golly, we've got that little 223, that Mossberg patrol rifle That's my standard hog gun, and
right.
Yes, sir. Got the Rattler, AGM Global Vision Rattler on it. We'll get set out there at night. So next time you come up here, we're going to shoot to get us some fresh pork, Larry.
I like how you think. You mentioned the rifle that you're shooting, and of course you're shooting in this instance with a 6.5 PRC. You're shooting 143 grain Hornady ELDX, that precision hunter.
That's it.
That ammo is unbelievably accurate, and of course, tremendously deadly as well too. And I'm anxious to see you shoot one of those hogs at that 400 yards or whatever distance. The maximum distance that you can find right there, and the rifle with that combination with the scope that you have with the stealth vision of your rifle and that Hornady ammo, that by golly, you can precisely place that bullet at a long distance. It's going to be interesting. Kind of opens up a brand new world for both you and me as far as our normal hog hunting kind of things that we do.
That's right. I've already told Kenneth during the rut, there are some big bucks that run that grove of pecans.
Yes.
When they get in the rut, I told him, talk to him about that. He's going to set up move his shooting bench to his front porch out there, and the shot's going to be 250 to 350 yards. And the thing about it, I've told people about the accuracy, with a quality scope like that and just a good barrel, what you can get. Right. It's not, if you've got a good rest, and see if you agree with me, it's not, you don't have to be Daniel Boone type shooting to do this. If you know how to shoot a rifle with this equipment, you can do some serious accuracy at long ranges, Larry, You
really can. And to me, a big part of that is practice. Get out there and don't, for the first shot, take a long range shot. Build up your confidence with your rifle, build up your confidence with, the ability to use it and learn the capabilities of how, at what distance it's accurate. Mm-hmm. Both you and I've got what we call 600-yard guns. That means that they're shooting an inch or less groups at 100. And so at 600, they're shooting about a 6-inch group at a maximum kind of thing. And of course, the vitals on a hog or a deer are about 10, 12 inches kind of thing. So to me, learn the capabilities of that rifle before you start shooting at long range and your abilities with it. But once you do, it's amazing how accurate those rifles with particularly stealth vision and with the Hornady ammo become.
Exactly, Larry. Well, I wish we had more time. It's about time for us to get around a real campfire. We may have to back off of it a little bit, but this summer heat here in Texas. But it's time for us to get together, buddy, and have some real campfire talk time. You be safe. I know you're right back from New Mexico. You got a lot catching up to do, but don't try to do it all in one day. And you and I are going to be back here next week with everybody, right?
I can hardly wait.
Folks, this segment is made possible by Ultrimatic Feeders. Go online to ultrimaticfeeders.com and check out the most awesome line of game feeders in the world. I've been using these things for 15 years, and I've got one that's been in the woods about 10 or 11 years. I forget exactly how long. Check them out, ultrimaticfeeders.com. Folks, I want to tell you about an awesome destination down at Lake Tawakoni. It's Wind Point Park. If you love the outdoors, if you like camping in an area, I bet I saw 60 deer. I was in there recently touring the place, went fishing down there. It's some awesome fishing, camping, long-term RV rentals overnight. There's some beautiful cabins, some bigger cabins and littler ones right there by fishing. You can walk out the door and fish at some of those places. But the place is neat as a pin. It's been around for 10 years, Wind Point Park. If you haven't been down there in the last 10 years, it's all remodeled and just beautiful. So check it out online. I think the website is windpointparktx.com. Of course, you can just Google Wind Point Park, Tawakoni, and pull it up. But I want you to know about it. You're going to be hearing old Luke talk about the fishing down there a lot. I've already done some bank fishing there, so you can catch a lot of blues, and you can also catch a ton of channel catfish along those rocks. Another thing I want to tell you about, VINEYARDMAX. The website is vineyardmax.net. They make an awesome line of game feeders, fish feeders, they're just an awesome product, but they also have a deer attractant. That's what I really want to tell you about. It's called VINEYARDMAX. It's made from dried, hammer-milled grape hulls and wheat bran, I think it is, or, ground up wheat, and also some corn chops. So it's got stuff in it deer-like, plus it's got that scent of grapes that we've used it. Larry and I have used it out in West Texas where a deer have never seen a grape and had them come in on it. So check that out, and the website again is vineyardmax.net. Folks, this segment is made possible by Smokin Tex electric smokers that I've been using a long, long time, CatfishPro, catfishing baits and catfish supplies, Ultrimatic Feeders, and AGM Global Vision, maker of the spotters and thermal scopes that I hunt with. Well, friends, let's shift from hunting talk a little bit and go up to beautiful Lake Texoma. Mr. Bill Carey with Striper Express is going to talk some striper fishing with us. Good morning, Bill.
Well, good morning, Luke, and all y'all out in radio land.
How's Mr. Carey and all the associates there with Striper Express doing this morning?
This summer has been above my expectations. That's really the way to put it. These guys are catching limits at times, and, for 40 years I've said a good summer day is 17, maybe 20 fish, but it just ceases to amaze me.
You were telling me this, like 2 days ago they were out and got into, they caught a bunch on lures and they got in a bunch of schooling 20-inchers, right? Or just under 20.
Yes, sir.
That. Yeah.
They were all big fish, and they managed to put 2 per person in the box on the way in, and it filled everybody's boxes with limits. Just crazy.
2 over 20. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, the 2 big fish per person.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, I know that that you specialize, you and your team of guides. It's summer in Texas. Now, granted, a couple weeks ago, we did have a reprieve. Some of the temperatures were in the 80s for the high, but it's more or less normal for it to be approaching 100. That's no fun. I don't care. I mean, being out there at noon, and the fish, they're in the shade. They're taking it. They're in the cold, the deep water. You guys, the trick is, it's not really a trick. It's just a method that y'all use. Get out there at day, but really leave right at first light, right? Get out there on your spot.
That is right. I run a little campaign, and it says, "Too hot to fish, not the way we do it."
Yeah, yep. And you may have to run to find actively feeding fish, Bill. You might, early in the morning, you might have to run several miles, right?
Oh, little Dave is taking his people up the Choctaw River. He tells them in the morning, he likes to be backing out at 6 sharp because he says, we're going to take a 30 to 40-minute ride, but we're going to go get these fish up the Choctaw River. And then they all spread out. They all work together with the telephones now. It used to be radios years ago. And old man's got a saying, no heroes, no zeros. Everybody shares information.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good policy. And it's a fish catching and locating policy. What Bill's saying is, folks, everybody's got a cell phone. These guys, they're not worried about, I did this. It's more of a joint effort. We did this. So up the Washita, is he up in the channel or just kind of the mouth of it? I mean, is he going up the river? I guess that's my question.
Yes, sir. Yeah. What we call between the bridges, way up.
Way up there.
Yes, sir.
Is that old, what's that old bridge, the old iron bridge way the heck up there? That's way up there, around out of Denison. But I think they got
names for them.
Yeah.
I know that old iron bridge. That's what we call it.
Yeah, the old iron bridge. I think they've rebuilt that thing. But so up in the river itself, artificial. I know you guys specialize in artificial. I know Little Dave sometimes reverts to. I say reverts to. He uses live shad, but. Artificial baits have been working really well, right?
Yes, sir. Slabs have been better than topwater, and everybody loves the topwater. But Luke, you love that slab action when you get on it. And that fish wraps that rod against the side of the boat because you're rolling it up, ripping it. We call it fast as you can. And when that fish catches that slab, he pulls that rod down, kabam, and the fight is on.
You bet. This is such a temptation for me, folks. So here's the real story. I live south of Dallas, about 25 miles in a little community called Combine. Bill is north of Dallas. Now, I can get north of Dallas through the traffic, but I leave real early. And you, since you guys are leaving fishing early, I can buzz up there through Dallas when there's no traffic and be up there at daylight. Don't be surprised if I call soon and say, "Hey, Bill, you're talking about these slab catching using lead slab, which is a lead spoon." I know most of our friends know that, but it's one of my favorite ways to catch fish. Don't be surprised if old Luke doesn't call. Hey, can I be there at daylight on a Tuesday or something? The slab fishing and catching those stripers on slabs, Bill, it's enough it's enough to lure me out of hiding.
Heck yeah. Yeah, that's a good. I'm glad you mentioned that, Luke. Yeah, folks, a slab in Texas is a lead spoon, and we use them up to 2 ounces.
Yeah.
And we rip them. You drop it straight down, maybe 50, 70 foot of water, drop it straight down, and the minute it hits that bottom, you cock that handle and reel as fast as you can. Everybody is always amazed on how fast that fish can swim to catch that slab ripping up through that school of fish.
I remember your son, Chris Carey, who's a premier guide up there, folks, at Texoma. Chris told me, I was talking to him, we were catching fish on slabs, and I said, it's amazing with these fast retrieve reels. I can get it back with the old Ambassador or something that, you were moving the slab fast, but now you can burn that slab with these fast retrieve reels. He says, Luke, you can't reel it too fast for them, and that's true, isn't it?
It's amazing. Yeah, those Ambassadors we grew up with were 5 to 1.
Yeah.
And now these reels are up to 7.5 to 1. And one turn of the handle is, I don't really know, 4 foot? Just amazing.
It pulls that lure. And then too, it seems like a lot of the strikes when slab fishing might go when you're already cranking fast and you're pulling the rod, jerking the rod, and no telling how fast. A striper is a speed demon in the water, that big broad tail, and they can cover a lot of water quickly. So the early morning schooling, Bill, is I know it's fishing is fishing. It does change day to day. I know that, but is it pretty common now for the fish to be schooling up on top early at first light? Do you see that?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's our summer pattern when we leave blind casting the banks at the end of May. Within 2 weeks, mid-June, they group up in large schools. They are finished spawning. They are back down the rivers, and they get into huge schools. Like this school we call on the Alberta Wall, in the last few days, it was almost a mile long and probably a quarter mile wide. It was a huge school, and that's hard to conceive, but it happens, and it's amazing. They counted 100 boats working it on a Saturday.
That's a big area too, folks. Bill, I think it's important. Thank God for all the great radio stations that folks are listening to this on right now. The owners of these stations and the people that program it will never know how much I appreciate them running this show. But it's also a podcast now, wherever you get your podcast. So I always want to. Everybody in the Southwest knows where Lake Texoma is, but if you're listening up in Bangor, Maine, you may not know. Lake Texoma, folks, is a natural striper fishery. There's the salinity in the Red River and the Washita is just right for those striper eggs to be buoyant and hatch. So Lake Texoma is on the Texas-Oklahoma border, about an hour north of Dallas, right, Bill? That's where you're at.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yes, sir. Right on the border. There's 580 miles of shoreline. It's a huge lake, 90,000 acres.
It's like I had an old Cajun buddy used to go up there with me, and he'd say, "This is bigger than Lake Pontchartrain," but it's not, but it's awful big. So this pattern, okay, mid-August now, this pattern, early morning fishing, when will it change? I know before we know it, the gulls are going to be back. That's going to be a month away, maybe, 6 weeks, or.
Well, right now, what happens in mid-August is these fish will start moving up the ledges. They're in deep water where they can have oxygen. And I used to tell people when I fished, anytime they come above that thermocline, they're holding their breath the whole time they fish up there. They fight and fish. So yes, they're starting to move up the ledges, and we will bump slabs up the ledges, and then they get up on the flats. And the flats can be anywhere from 5 foot to 25 foot deep. And these are large flat surfaces underwater at the lake.
Large, just like if you were on the land, just a level plain or level field or something like that. The flats, exactly. Well, Bill, folks can track you down really easy wherever they're listening. StriperExpress.com. If they want to call Bill Carey and talk to you, and eventually they'll probably want to do that. How do they call you to book a trip or just to get some more striper tips?
All right, yeah, folks, you can call us. You'll get a hoot out of MT, our office manager. That number is 903-786-4477. That is 903-786-4477.
Or Bill, they can always, Striper Express, Facebook, the website, StriperExpress.com. You're easy to track down. Now, like I said, do not be surprised to see old Luke's sunny face up there about daylight soon. We'll talk to you soon, and thanks for the tips, Bill.
Good day.
Folks, let's talk a little outdoor cooking. Let me tell you about an electric smoker that I've been using for 15 years, I guess. Smokin Tex electric smokers. If you're tired of staying up all night keeping that wood fire burning when you're barbecuing, give Smokin Tex a try. They're made to last a lifetime. You can check them out at SmokinTex.com. That's SMOKINTEX.com. Well, friends, Mr. Larry Weissoon is going to tell you about the finest hunting optics that we have ever found.
Luke, these are called Stealth Vision. They come from Crockett, Texas. Dr. John McCall developed them. They're 34 millimeter tubes as opposed to the narrower tubes, so more light transmission. They have a little green light that comes on. That scope is level because that's when you want to pull the trigger. They have an optional lighted reticle as well, too, and a whole lot of other products, and folks can learn more about them by going to stealthvision.com.
And for seasonings, anything to do with outdoor cooking, all kind of jerky seasonings, sausage seasonings, Butcher Packer Supply. That's butcherpackersupply.com. I think the website is butcher-packer.com. Folks, how about that little intro from Ernest Tubb there? This segment here is brought to us by the Choctaw Hunting Lodge up in southeast Oklahoma, owned by the Choctaw Nation. Pyramyd Air, your one-stop shop for everything airgun related. Doug's Jugs, maker of some awesome jug lines for catching catfish. That's online, DougsJugs.com. Well, folks, Texas, the state of Texas, is known far and wide as a place to come hunt exotic animals. And some species are more here in Texas than in their native lands. Now, our next guest is someone that knows a whole lot about exotics. He's in the business of supplying exotics to ranches, Mr. Dustin Warnke. Now, Dustin is he wears many hats. He's also a social media guru. He's got a company that promotes outdoor products and outdoor people. Dustin, I'm going to quit bragging on you and just say good morning to you, buddy.
Good morning, Mr. Luke. It's a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, sir. And I don't think I'm wrong when I say that Texas is people think about Texas, they think about hunting whitetail deer, of course, but they also think about hunting exotics of all species. Now, okay, so that's the focus of one thing I want us to talk about. A ranch, say a 10,000-acre ranch, exotics do propagate. They breed. There's a lot of free-range black buck antelopes. There's a whole bunch of free-range axis deer in Texas. There are even places down around Cotulla with free-range warthogs, believe it or not. I was talking to Larry Weissoon about that. I'd like to go get one of those. But anyway, the ranches, say they got a hunting operation, they have to, if they don't breed these animals, in which Many of them don't. It's just not in the cards to do that. They have to go to someone like you, right, to acquire, say, a stock of black buck antelope on their ranch, or whatever, Pierre David deer, whatever. That's what you do, right?
Absolutely. That's one of the many hats that I wear, like you said before. And I would say probably the most prolific animals that run free range in Texas would be, because you mentioned axis and black buck, right?
Yep.
There's more of those in Texas than there are in their native homeland of India. And then the other one is aoudad, that are mainly in West Texas that run in free range. And there's just hundreds and hundreds in a herd of aoudad in places like Marfa and other places far, far West Texas. And so what happens in a lot of cases is ranchers and trappers and people like that are in my business will go and trap these free range and then sell them on the market. Places like Wildlife Buyer and Wildlife Partners has a website too, where they auction or they sell them, they kind of broker them privately through different channels, and that's the way that all works.
That's where that's how they actually acquire live trap, and like the audads, they are pretty well widely dispersed too. I mean, I know they were way out west for a long time, but there's free range herds of them now. But they're trapped and then transported to stock other ranches. That's how they get spread around, and that's how they become available for hunters, right?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that myself and many other people do is find what the market price is, and we typically find that on an auction site, like I mentioned, Wildlife Buyer earlier. What they're going for, and then we sell them wholesale, and then a ranch would sell them retail as a hunt. And a lot of people wonder, how those animals got to that ranch. Well, Oompa Loompas didn't put them there,
Right, right.
It happened by a case of somebody, getting them off of one property. And another thing, Luke, is that a lot of ranches will get overstocked on exotics, and I've run into that situation a lot in the businesses that I work with, where they go in and will need a trapper to use a round pin or a helicopter or something like that, and I've done it all, to come in and basically, pull them off of that land, put them on trailers, take them to a barn, and then resell them to a hunting ranch for sure.
So that's actually another MOS, or another job, if you will. The trappers. Mm-hmm. I've got a good buddy that's a exotic trapper. Been doing it he's a retired game warden. He's been doing that for years and years. And a ranch, say a free range ranch, it could be. It doesn't necessarily have to be. But say a ranch out in West Texas that's got audads out the kazoo, too many. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're especially in audads, bad about dominating feeders and
absolutely
jumping up on top of them and everything else. But say they've got all these audad, well, why not put them to a value on an animal? Dollar value gives it worth. So why not, just like wild hogs?
Yes.
Why stack up 10 of them on a trailer and look what I kill, when you could trap these hogs and make money, sell them, and hunt them too. I'm all about. Don't get me started. Don't let me get started on hogs, Dustin, or we'll be talking about 5 hours.
I know, we'll be talking another episode. Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
we'll be blended. But the deal is that when there's a surplus, that there is a whole. These trappers, that's a whole different genre. These guys, they make money on wild animals too. I think that's all a good thing, very good.
Absolutely. And one of the things I was going to say too is that look at what happened with fallow deer years ago. I remember the days with fallow deers, you couldn't give them away. And now, I don't know if anybody else does this too, but I call them the new whitetail.
Yeah.
And the reason is because, they have the palmated antlers. They can be hunted year round. They're an exotic species, but they have a lot of characteristics of whitetail that people look for in whitetail. And they also come in chocolate, spotted, or white. and they have a lot of characteristics. But it's just kind of funny how, with everything happening in the industry, that was one trend that I never saw coming. That fallow, we couldn't give a fallow doe away, and now high genetic fallow doe that has breeding potential could go for $4,500 right now, if you believe that.
Is that right? That's unreal.
Absolutely.
The Axis deer craze was strong. And it still is. Axis are a sought after animal. Trophy and meat too, but I'd say 5 or 6 years ago, that's all you heard is axis.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've hunted them in free range and in some big high fenced areas too. It's kind of an interesting topic. A good friend of mine is Mark Billette. Mark owns B&C Outfitters, East Texas Exotics, and he's got a big parcel of East. They have 2,500 acres down there in Trinity County. And he was one of probably the first person to high fence hog hunts back in the mid '80s, back before that became a thing. Well, he was telling me the same thing, Dustin, that fallow deer now are in high demand. And he says, Luke, I'm going to tell you what, and he loves to cook like you and I. He's an outdoor cook. Mark said, I did a test. I had some axis steak and some fallow steak. And I didn't tell these guys. I just told them, I want you to tell me which one of these is better. He cooked them, grilled both steaks. And he said, they said, they'd all taste the same. It's just excellent. So fallow meat, and I'm all about cooking game meat. Fallow meat, to me, is as good as it gets, a fallow deer, so...
Absolutely. And I've got one customer of mine on the hunting side that calls axis deer sweet meat because it almost tastes like the meat has a sweet taste. And it's very interesting that you look at, something like an axis deer, and the whole thing's tender. It doesn't matter how old the buck is. It's just like, a young doe or, something like that, where the whole thing's kind of tenderized for you. It's like, God's meat, That's why I like axis. And that's among one of my favorite meats. It
is. It definitely is. That's a big part of, I like the antlers on both, the palmated antlers on the fallow and the multi-branched antlers on the exotic. I've hunted them both. But when it comes right down to it, old Luke is after those steaks and the hound meat, the round steak, if you will, on these deer are. I don't know why they're that much. I've read a story one time, a detail on fallow deer, and the English ships back in the day used to load those up and take them. Yes, they would. They were. I'm not saying they're tame. I imagine you pin up any deer in a little pen, he'll get semi-acclimated to humans. But they could ship these deer on ships down in the hole, and they would put them on islands, places like that. And I guess even back then, people knew how hardy they were, and how tasty the meat was. We could go on and on talking about exotics. I tell you, a cool looking deer that last few years I've learned a little bit about. Is it a Pierre David deer? Pierre David? Yes. Aren't those cool looking deer?
They are. They have a very interesting looking antler set, that's similar because they're not as common of a common exotic. And really in exotics, you have two types of exotics. You have your commons and your supers. And the supers mainly all come out of Africa in that area. The commons mainly come out of Europe and India. And then the Manchurian Sika versus the Dabrowski Sika and that kind of stuff. That's coming out of Europe versus Japan. Manchurian, China, that area, and that kind of stuff. So you have just a wide variety. And Texas is just such a melting pot of just wonderful opportunity for hunting. You will not find anywhere else in the world the diversity of exotics and the population of exotics of any caliber, than you will in Texas. So that's the thing I love about it.
It's a destination for sure. Dustin,
Absolutely.
I would like you to connect people with you folks. Dustin is not only into exotics big time, but he's I call him a guru. Anything to do with the outdoor promotions for websites and you name it. How do people learn more about you, Dustin? Man, you're a treasure when it comes to a lot of different things, but how do they find out more about what you do,
Sure, absolutely. I have site called businesswithdustin.com, which is kind of my business website for Warnke Enterprises. That's my business that I do promotions, advertising, marketing, websites. I've done it all. I've been building websites, Luke, since the internet was cool.
I know.
Back in the 90s. So I have a lot of expertise in that, and social media promotion, video, podcast, TV show production, that kind of stuff. So businesswithdustin.com is one place you can find me, and then I just launched that website. And then I also have a website that's been out for a number of years called dustinsprojects.com. 2 S's, dustinsprojects.com. My phone number I'll go ahead and give as well if anybody wants to text or call me, 512-497-7674. And I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Folks, this is Luke. For about the past decade, I've been hunting editor for Air Gun Hobbyist magazine. I think the only magazine devoted strictly to air gun shooting and hunting in the country. Well, in that length of time, I've learned quite a bit about big bore air guns and smaller calibers too. A spot to go to that if you're interested in air guns, you need to know about Pyramyd Air. The website is PYRAMYD, PyramydAir.com. They have anything and everything you need, from the guns themselves, the big bores or the smaller calibers, to the accessories. Just remember PyramydAir.com, and there's a number when you get on the website if you need to call and talk to somebody. Give them a buzz, and they can fill you in on little details that you might need to know about shooting or hunting with big bore air guns. While you're on the website there, I'd like you to check out the big bore air gun that I've done a great deal of hunting with. It's the Seneca Dragon Claw, 50 caliber, pressures up to 3,000 psi, and it looks like a conventional rifle. Wooden stock. I think you'll like the appearance, and I know you'll like the performance. It shoots not only bullets, but also air bolts as well, tipped with a broadhead. Check it out. It's the Seneca Dragon Claw.
The snowflakes fall as winter calls, and time just seems to fly.
Friends, this segment is brought to us by CVA Muzzleloaders. In my opinion, the very best muzzleloaders in the world, the ones that I shoot. You can check them out online, CVA.com. AGM Global Vision, maker of the Rattler and the Adder that I use, you can check them out online too, agmglobalvision.com. Kuby's Wild Game Processing and Kuby's Restaurant in Dallas, and VINEYARDMAX, maker of some awesome deer attractant and some very fine game feeders and fish feeders, located down in Nacogdoches, Texas. Check them out at vineyardmax.net. Friends, this is Luke. I really do appreciate all of you tuning in today. We try to be diverse in our shows and cover fishing and hunting. Just about anything that's of interest in the outdoors, we'll touch on if you listen to our show very often. But thanks to all of our guests today. We've pretty much covered the bases on hunting and fishing. A lot of good outdoor talk. I want to devote the little time that we have left in today's show to hunting and shooting big bore air guns. Now, not too long ago, a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks, I covered some basic information on hunting with air rifles. Now, I'm not an air rifle expert as far as the workings, the valves. There's a whole lot of technical things that go into air rifles that make them powerful. But I am very experienced in hunting and shooting them. For about the past close to a decade, I guess, I've been hunting editor for Air Gun Hobbyist, which is the only air gun, only magazine, glossy magazine in the country that I'm aware of that's devoted to shooting and hunting with air rifles. So I know quite a bit about hunting with them. Now, I'm going to try to help you decide what type big bore air. We're talking about something that'll hunt deer and hogs and effectively take them out. You need to know about Pyramyd Air. That's your one-stop shop, I call it, for everything air gun related. There's the rules and regulations on all the states is there at the website, PyramydAir.com, PYRAMYD Air.com. In my opinion, it's like a clearinghouse for everything to do with air guns. Not only big bores, but small ones, small bore, small calibers too. Let's talk about what you might need to get started. Say you've thought about, Well, I've read about these big bore air guns taking deer, wild hogs, and that side exotic animals, even bigger game, buffalo, if you will. But I know very little about them. So there's your door entry level thing. Get into PyramydAir.com website, spend some time there, and just browse around. Now, what type of air rifle do you want? What's going to suit you best? Now, there are some air rifles. There's a lot of varieties and a lot of really quality air rifles out there. There's some that have the pressure up to 4,500 PSI, and they shoot a couple of times extremely hard, developing a whole bunch of energy. But the shots, the air pressure is expelled in a couple of shots, so that might be what you want. I've shot those. I've killed hogs with them, those type. And then there's the other type rifles that pressure up to, say, 3,000. Now, my favorite, and yes, I do have a favorite air rifle. It's called a Seneca Dragon Claw 2. Now, the Dragon Claw has been out for years, but the new improved model a couple of years ago came out, I guess. And it pressures up to 3,000 PSI. Now, I'm going to tell you some specs on the Dragon Claw 2. And it looks like a conventional hunting rifle, wood stock. It's a beautiful gun, but the price of it is not what you might expect to pay for some of these other ones. I don't know, that it's just a bargain. For just a bit over $700, between $700 and $800, I guess, you can get a Seneca Dragon Claw 2. Now, the 2 is the new improved, and they're all 2s now that come out. So what can you do with that Seneca Dragon Claw? With an air bolt, now the air bolt is a short, it's like a crossbow, a bolt, an arrow, if you will, tipped with a broadhead. They have killed Cape buffalo, these rifles. I mean, they're with an air bolt tipped with a good sharp broadhead. They'll send an air bolt about, I think, around 600 feet per second, something like that. That's flying now. But I don't hunt with air bolts with an air gun. I use a compound bow to hunt with. That's what I use to shoot my arrows. A lot of people do, and that's great. But the Seneca Dragon Claw will also shoot chunks of lead slugs there, if you will. And you think of an air gun shooting a little tiny projectile. It's a 50 caliber. I shoot the 336 grain slugs a lot. And what can you expect out of that? You can get 3 or 4 shots. I do. That'll develop 300 foot-pounds of energy, something like that, give or take a little bit. So with a velocity of around just under 700 feet per second. Now, how does that compare with one of these super powerful 2-shot big bore air guns? Well, it's less. I mean, but you're going to have 3 or 4 shots when you're out. That's going to, and trust me, 300 foot-pounds of energy is plenty to take out any white-tailed deer or any wild hog in the world, if you will. The velocity of just under 700 feet per second with this Seneca Dragon Claw 2. Now, the reason I can say this with so much authority is because that's the gun I hunt with. Now, as a hunting editor for the magazine, I've shot, I shoot them all, and have had experience with most all of them. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And that's just what I prefer. You might want one that shoots two shots, 2 or 3 shots at pressuring up to 4,500. I don't really see the need in that. Now, will I take a Seneca Dragon Claw and be shooting a deer at 75 or 100 yards? No, I won't. Now, I have no doubt pressured to 3,000 PSI that the Dragon Claw would cleanly kill a deer at 75 yards with a perfect shot. But I've hunted all my life, and I know that every shot that we make in the field is not perfect. So, I limit my shots to about. I've actually killed an aoudad at 70 yards with the Seneca Dragon Claw. But I look at hunting with my air rifle, the Dragon Claw, 60 yards. I actually sight mine in at 60 yards. Now, stretch it out to 70. I don't see. I've I do that on occasion. But I try to set up to hunt where I'm within 60 yards. Now, 60 yards is not, it's pretty good distance, if you think, especially if you're an old bow hunter and you're expanding your range out to 60 yards. That's a good long distance. It really is, especially in the woods. Now, so a lot of people will carry this conversation a little bit further to long-range air gun shooting. I've got buddies that shoot their air rifles and hunt with them 100 yards, 125 yards. Now, there are air rifles out there that will get that job done. I don't want to mislead you. But I just don't. I don't know. I've just hunted so much with a bow and centerfire rifles and everything else that I want that shot to be, I want to try my very best to make a perfect shot. And inside 60 yards, I can almost always do that with my Seneca Dragon Claw. Now, the drop on these, you're going to develop the foot pounds you need with an air rifle, you're going to need a heavy bullet, say 250 grain to 336 that I shoot a lot. So, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the trajectory, the drop in that bullet out past 75 yards, I don't care if you're pushing it at 3,000 or 4,500 PSI, is going to be pretty strong. So the big heavy bullets with the 4,500 PSI air fill the tanks I'm talking about the pressure on the tanks built in on the air rifle, it's going to drop less than one at 3,000 PSI, but it's still going to drop appreciably after about 75 yards. So guys with scopes that know their distance exactly and know where that bullet's going to be, there's a lot of people that like to hunt and shoot 125 yards, and some people farther than that with an air gun. But the one that I shoot, the Seneca Dragon Claw 2, I'm gonna say 60 yards and in, and I kill a lot of game, hogs and deer inside 60 yards, 40 yards maybe. Where in the woods, that's not that big a deal. So that'll help you. You're going to need a way to fill your big bore air rifle and nowadays the little portable compressors are affordable. Back 6, 8, 10 years ago, they weren't affordable and they weren't that readily available, but you'll see a bunch of really good compressors there at PyramydAir.com. So check them out. Folks, I hope this has helped you a lot. Back in the day, I would take air tanks, and I don't even use air tanks anymore. I just use my little compressor, fill it up, fill the tanks up on the Dragon Claw before I go hunting, and say I shoot 2 or 3 times back at camp. You can use alligator clamps, hook that compressor to your car battery or plug it into AC, charge it right back up and eliminate carrying around air tanks or filling air tanks. Folks, I appreciate you being with us. I do appreciate all of our radio stations for sure. Thank God for all of them. That's what this show started out on, terrestrial radio, and I hope it never leaves that. It's on a bunch of stations, but it's also a podcast too, Catfish Radio with Luke Clayton and friends. I know a lot of people, if they miss it on the radio or if they just want to listen to it later, certainly is a podcast now. Be safe in the outdoor, folks. Thanks to all of our guests today. Come back next week. We're going to have some more fun talking hunting and fishing. Folks, that about wraps our show up for this week. I've enjoyed being with you, and I hope you had a good time, too. This segment was made possible by AGM Global Vision, maker of the Rattler and the Adder, 2 awesome thermal scopes that I use for all my night hunting. Check out AGM, all the products that they have there online, agmglobalvision.com. And, folks, we're also brought to you by the Choctaw Hunting Lodge up in southeast Oklahoma, located about, 45 minutes west of Hugo, Oklahoma, owned by the Choctaw Nation. It's about 45,000 acres of awesome mountain, country, hills, valleys, loaded with game. Lots of eastern turkey, and they do eastern turkey hunts if you're looking for a spot to hunt turkey in the spring. Also, I want to remind you about the Seneca 50 caliber Dragon Claw that shoots bullets and pellets. And by pellets, I'm talking about 200 and 210 grain lead, chunks of lead. It's a big bore air gun that I use. Check out the Seneca Dragon Claw there at PyramydAir.com.